Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Melissa Nagy, and I want to welcome you to Learn at Lunch, a monthly meeting to help parents have a better understanding of what their children are experiencing on social media and ways to help identify and manage harmful activity. Before I introduce today's speaker, a little background on our show's sponsor. CyberSafely.ai is an AI scanning software developed to increase student safety on social media. When the AI identifies a potential issue, it sends an alert to the parents and any other predetermined recipient who can then determine if further action needs to be taken. Today's speaker is Tina Husted. Tina is an entrepreneur, physical therapist, real estate broker, fine artist, retired master's elite marathoner, a high school golf coach at her kids' school, and she sits on the Ohio CASA and Ohio Arts Council boards. She is the wife of our Lieutenant Governor, John Husted. Though maintaining a busy schedule, Tina sees her most important roles as a Christian wife and mother of her 3 children. Today, we will learn about social media safety and Ohio's legislative efforts. If you have questions for Tina, please feel free to ask by typing them in the chat or hold your questions to the end of the meeting and we'll go through them at that time. So without further ado, I am pleased to welcome and introduce you to Tina Husted.
Hello, everyone. It's nice to be with you. As I mentioned, for those who just got on, I'm actually we live in Columbus, Ohio, but I'm actually in Nelsonville, Ohio, and I'm actually at an AI seminar for community colleges and colleges across the state to help navigate AI and how it can be helpful in education. So here we are, talking about that while here we all care about our children and the safety of AI. So it's a fine and intricate balance. I'm very thankful, Melissa, for the opportunity to speak. Thank you for inviting me, and had the opportunity to meet Neil and others who are working so hard to protect our children. And I will tell you just a little backstory on me and why I care about this as a parent. I feel like our kids, or I know our children. I have a senior in high school and a sophomore in high school, 2 girls who both have basically grown up through the smartphone age. The smartphone has become, a very prevalent thing in our society and in our children's lives, as we all know. And I've watched our kids have to navigate through various social issues with it, and much sometimes toward the detriment of our children's mental health. One of the early action items that required me to kind of get involved and care about this was when I witnessed my daughter, our youngest daughter, who's the sophomore. Her name's Kylie. She had used her phone or her little mini iPad to perform some dance moves and things on TikTok at 9. And I didn't even know anything about TikTok and how she was even able to download it, because, this was almost 7 years ago. And so unfortunately for her, when I discovered it, there were some profanities in the dance and the song. And I thought to myself, how can a child of 9 years old access content like this? This is really, really scary and dangerous. And, now today we see so many other harmful things that have happened to our kids. And I don't need to go through all of those things, but I recognized back then and quickly, deleted the content and prevented our kids from ever using TikTok. They don't have it on their phones, and nor will they ever have it, at least while I'm paying for their phones. But so I think fast forward to where we are today, and why I care so much is as a parent and as even a coach, I've watched these the activities that the kids have and how they're so gelled to their phones. And so it's required me to study it, learn it, read more about how we can help, how we can protect our kids. I will touch on some of the things that we've done in the state, and then I'm also going to touch on an author for those who are interested in learning more about how we can help our kids. But we have several things that we're doing in the state, and one of the ones that you may have heard a lot about, well, there were two. First of all, this was before the cell phone policy was enacted by the state through the governor, for the high schools, that all high schools have to sign off. Have you talked about that at all, Melissa, in any of these conversations? Okay, so the governor signed off on some legislation. This was back in May, to require school districts to have a cell phone policy. And part of the impetus to that, and this is, I'm not trying to, take credit for it, but I was in John's ear a lot about this, because I felt that the kids were, having way too much access to their phones at school and being too distracted. And so John spoke with the governor. We got the governor to come to one of the meetings with all the school districts that were protecting their kids, basically, by having a very strong cell phone policy, many of which prevent them from using the phones during the school day. And there is just remarkable evidence that when the kids were not using the phones during the school, verbal and physical offenses went down more than 50%. There were less drug-related offenses. 86% of teachers reported a positive impact. I mean, there are so many things that are positive. Kids are actually talking to each other in the lunchroom. So that was one thing that has happened in the state, that every school district should be enacting some sort of policy. I don't know specifically how that's impacted across every district in the state. I know our school district is looking at it very closely. And then one of the other things that we were trying to do that got kind of shut down, we were trying to work on a social media parental notification act, so that when a child signed up for social media, that the parent is notified. And it's positive in the news that we've heard that Instagram has created teen accounts, if you will, but we believe that it's not enough in terms of making sure that parents are aware of the content that's occurring, because there is clearly some severe dangers. We may have heard recently of the young man who was 14 who committed suicide because he had developed a relationship with an AI bot, essentially. And I was just having a conversation this morning with Christine Venice, who is the head. She started a nonprofit organization called Unite for Safe Social Media. It's a great site. If you want to go to that, you can look that one up, Unite for Safe Social Media. And they have a lot of educational information there for families who want to understand what what's happening across the state and across the country in terms of protecting our children. But one of the things she told me today when I spoke with her is that there are now over 40 sites, online AI chat sites for kids or for anybody to get in to form AI relationships. And it's very, very disconcerting. And there's no legislative action against this right now, especially from the federal level. There are two bills that United has tried to get passed that have passed the Senate, but now it's going to the House. And they're afraid it's going to not get through, only because there have been some free speech questions about it. I have the two different bills. One's called the Federal Kids Online Safety Act. It's KOSA, KOSA. And then there's a Children and Teens Online Privacy Protection Act. We were hopeful that these would get through the House before the end of the year, but we believe unless it gets attached to a must-pass bill, that these will just end up, falling on the wayside and they won't go into effect. But basically, both of these were put out there to protect the kids in terms of parental engagement, parental notification, and protecting kids from being targeted through the algorithms that are part of all of these sites. I think, the biggest aha moment for all of this is, and I think we all can relate to this, is how kids can access content that is just simply not acceptable for their particular age group. So we have to find a better way forward for our kids, and certainly through governmental action. I do think that this will help. We're not trying to create some sort of um, I don't know, strict law against people, but we are trying to protect the children. And I think it's really, really important that we talk to our legislators, we talk to our Congress people, and try to get them to get engaged in this and help protect our kids. From a standpoint of educating yourself as a parent, there are two books that I recommend highly. One being the more recent book called The Anxious Generation. It was written by Jonathan Haidt. His name's spelled Haidt, but it's pronounced Haidt, Jonathan Haidt. The Anxious Generation, there were a couple quotes from that book that just really stood out to me, that I'll share with you. One is, there is a God-shaped hole in every human heart, and if it doesn't get filled with something noble, modern society will quickly pump it full of garbage. And I think his point is that now that we have this digital age where people, and our children in particular, can just be constantly on these devices, they can fill it quickly with garbage, because we know there's a lot of garbage out there. And thanks to people like Cyber AI and others who are trying to prevent that from happening, it's still happening. One of the things that I also did, and I didn't mention this as a parent, when I got when the kids got their phones, is I did put some restrictions on their phones. So you can, and most people on this call probably already know this, that you can put restrictions based on age requirements on, TV content, any content that comes through the phone. You can put age requirements or restrictions, like if it's G-rated, PG-13, rated R. You can also limit the amount of time they spend on any social media site, which I have done with our children. The data shows that if a child is using social media and or their phone screen time less than 3 hours a day, that their actual emotional health will be fine. But anytime they start inching over the 3 hours, and this is the studies by Jonathan Haidt. He's a doctor of sociology and psychology from NYU. So this is what he does. He studies and takes real data. And so if you want to read some of his work, all these stats are in there. So his other book, this was his previous book, it's called The Coddling of the American Mind. He wrote that along with Greg Lukianoff. One of my favorite quotes in that book is, prepare the child for the road, not the road for your child. So, we also need to not just educate ourselves by, being on these types of forums, but then taking the information and then, educating our kids and helping our kids understand the dangers. And I will tell you, it's hard because, with our kids having gone through it, I mean, I feel like our kids are in the height of it because of, this started in 2012 and we're 12 years into it. And that's just the bulk of the time our children have grown up. And I get the eye rolls. I get the, oh mom, I hear this from you a lot. And I tried to be really streamlined when I share the information, and without trying to be too much of a, quote unquote nagger, because I want them to understand how much I care and love them, but I also want them to be good leaders amongst their own friend group. I hear a lot though, with being a coach, I do hear some of the younger kids, especially on the team, their parents have had several freshmen on the team, their parents don't even let them have a phone yet. And so to me, that's positive. Unfortunately, though, I'm sure there's a large group of people that still use the phone as a babysitter, as a way to, keep the kid occupied. But I find, at least in this small sample of people, they're really, really, they're aware. People are aware of the dangers and the ill effects. There was also, if you go on to the United for Safe Social Media, if you go to their site, there's an article that they have linked there, but you can also look it up. It was through the UK Times, in Oxford did a really great study, and this was just posted on the 14th of October, of the cell phone, the risks and the anxiety that comes through our use of the smartphones with children and teens and females in particular. So there's a lot of data out there. We all are aware of what the concerns are, and so I feel like as a parent, as a little bit of a leader in the state, and having an ability to influence at least my husband, and hopefully him influence others, that we can bring to light our concerns, and our love for our kids, and wanting them to be healthy, and wanting them to have a great life and great future that is not necessarily so digitally engaged. I did read, and if you want to follow one other thing with Jonathan Haidt, he has a blog. It's called After Babel, Babel, After Babel. If you wanted to subscribe to that, he sends out like a weekly it's a newsletter, and there's a lot of great nuggets of information in that. One he sent out just this week that I thought was really great, was a church who had done a 28-day digital fast, is what they called it. So, and they called it kind of a roadmap to spiritual renewal. So they took each week and tried to do something a little different each week in their lives with their phones. And number one was detaching themselves from the phone. That, and we as adults are very guilty of this. I mean, we work from our phones, we communicate through our phones, and so we're also showing we're providing an example for our kids by using them for our work and for our time that we use from our social level as well. So, but they took 4 weeks, they detached, then after they detached, they tried to use in week 2 to discover like how they felt about detaching. And I would be interested to see how many people could detach for a week. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how many people could do it. I mean, since so many people use their phones for work, and then discover what they learned, and then delight in the joy that you feel from being detached, and then finally determine on how you can solidify some change through detachment. And obviously I'm not advocating for anybody to give up their phones or their computers or anything like that, but it's really just trying to be hyper aware of where we're going in the future. And, as I sit here today with this AI conference, I think to myself, here we're talking about, all the benefits of AI, and there are many, but we also have to really kind of take ourselves out of that and ask ourselves, what can we do to, also protect ourselves from it? And it's a very difficult balance. And I'm hopeful that everybody that's on this call maybe learned something that I shared that you can share with someone else. I mean, if I even help one person today, I feel like I did something good. So I'll just leave you with that. If anybody would like to ask a question, I have a few minutes, and hopefully I can share any more insight that I may have with you. Thank you.
Yes, please feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question, or type it into the chat. And thank you, Tina, for that informational
Of course.
talk.
Of course.
Neil, did you have a question?
I did it, and I hit the wrong button. I did not unmute. Sorry, Tina. Obviously, from a political perspective, can you help share, and maybe that's not a question, you don't have the information, your husband does, but what pushback you got from the social media platforms as you were engaging and trying to get them to assist?
Oh, yes. There was a very big lobby that was against us for sure. The initial push was basically just Social Media Parental Notification Act. All we wanted was for parents to be notified when their kids signed up. Okay, that was it. And so a parent has to sign off for the kid to get on the site. That's the bottom line. And the lobby was very big, very cash rich, I would expect. And they shut us down. It didn't get through. So they filed a lawsuit against us. At the last hour too. It wasn't like it was, I think, the very end of the month. We had it out there for several months, and sure enough, it got shut down before it could go into law. So, it's really all about dollars, right? I mean, we know our kids are influenced by advertising and selling items, and if the kids aren't on those sites, that it has an impact. And so that it's in their best interest to keep as many people engaged and online as possible.
Yes, thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
There anybody else that has any questions for Tina?
Yeah, I was just wondering, Beth Walsh Mormon, I'm a literacy specialist at the ESC of the Western Reserve. And I guess my question would be, I definitely understand the policy points, but is there any discussion about looking at statewide media literacy? Because in the end, what we need to protect our students from is, right, how to be productive citizens in this digitally connected world. And I'm conscious of the need for policy, but I also don't see a lot of movement in looking at really meaningful statewide standards around media and information literacy that's embedded and across contents and really prepares our students for the challenges of a very, very, I don't know, toxic digital world that is outside and beyond the school.
Beth, it's a great question. And I think because all of this has happened so quickly, and I just don't think that anybody's developed anything. I personally think it could be an educational class for our kids that they have. I mean, I know they talk about it a little bit in my kids' classrooms, but educating them on how they can protect themselves, how they I mean, just even the idea of being distracted. People don't realize when every time one of those dings goes off on your phone or your buzz goes off on your phone, it distracts your train of thought. And so think about these kids who are in their formidable years, or they're trying to learn and they're constantly getting distracted by a Snapchat or whatever it is coming through their phone. The brain is trying to develop, and it can't think clearly in a focused way if this is constantly happening to them. So I love the fact you brought this up. I will ask within our within our group to see if there's anything that's happening with regard to that. But I do think educational is so important. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I don't mean to be self-promoting, but I'm actually going to be releasing a book through NCTE, the National Council of Teachers of English, where we're looking at digital source evaluation embedded across the content areas. And it's just really, in my looking into that book, and as I was writing it with a professor from Kent, we really came to understand that this is just, it has to become, it's a tool that we have to teach our students how to use,
Right.
just in the way that we had to teach them how to use the internet,
Yep.
the calculator and all of that. And I just,
Yes.
I worry about not fighting this from a two-pronged approach, which is building up those dispositions, right? Which is really, like, to me, it's having the kids build these skeptical mindsets. That's the first and number one sort of protection that they might have. So building up those skeptical mindsets and embedding that into what they're doing and considering that an essential part of literacy, especially in the secondary world. So yeah, I know, I just, because I think are some good things happening in some other states around education and standards and making schools more meaningful partners in inoculation that's going to have more of a long-term effect, right? We can create these safeguards, but the innovators in Silicon Valley are going to find ways around it, right?
Yep.
And the students are going to find ways around it.
Yeah. Well, that was the whole idea behind the cell phone free school. I mean, there are schools that are truly cell phone free, and they have found that the outcomes that have significantly gone up when they took the phones out of the kids' hands.
Oh yeah, no, 100% I'm for the policy component, but I think there's a two-pronged, right? I think
Yeah.
this is an issue that has to come from
Sure.
also from teaching them
Yes,
what it means
yes.
to be autonomous in a digital world.
Right, right. Well, your point is very well taken, and I will do some digging to see if there's something more out there. I can't imagine at some point there won't be some education on this for all of our kids in the schools, and probably at an earlier age, I'm thinking fourth, fifth grade before the kids even, it's kind of like a health class in a way, part of health, where this is more mental health, but
Yep.
getting to them earlier.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, I have to run. I know, Neil, you said you had one quick question before I left.
You got my question, Tina. Thank you very much.
Oh, good. Okay. Very good.
Appreciate your time.
Absolutely. It was very nice to be with everybody. Just try to be as safe as possible out there with our kids and our families. And let's all try to have a good, our own personal habits, I think, impact others. And if we can do our best to shine some light and some examples on, positive digital use, I highly encourage us all to do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tina. And
Bye.
just as a reminder to everybody, we will not have our normal Learn at Lunch meetings in November and December due to the holidays, but we look forward to seeing you all again in January of 2025. So from all of us here at cybersafely.ai, we want to say thank you for being here with us today. And until we meet again, stay safe and have a wonderful holiday season.